Hello and welcome to this first look exploring session, a fast pacey read-through of Oedipus, a Senecan tragedy translated by Alexander Neville, published in 1563 and written his translation a couple of years earlier. This is one of a procession of Senecan tragedies that were translated in the early years of the reign of Queen Elizabeth, and we're I say giving a bit of a flyby to them because they're quite influential in many ways, and also not in other ways, which we might discuss sometime in the future. But I say we're going to read this at pace. We're not going to be stopping and starting very much. Hopefully we'll have some time to discuss at the end. But reading today, Jocasta and Phorbas is.
Hi, I'm Greg, based near Stratford-on-Avon at the moment, and looking forward to some cheerful Greek play. Yay!
Greek via Rome via the court, the world of early Elizabeth. Reading Creon today is.
Hi everyone, I'm Cheynne. I'm a grad student from Cal State in Long Beach and studying English literature.
Reading Manto, Senex, and the chorus in Act 3, 4, and 5 is.
Hi, I'm Tom from Brighton.
And joining us to read Oedipus as well as Nuntius is.
Liza Graham, coming to you from London. I can't wait for this cheerful play.
Yeah, so much happiness. And I'll be reading Teiresias, chorus in Act 1, and occasionally mentioning when seen an act change over. So without further ado, we're going to dive into Act 1. And on stage we have Oedipus the king and Jocasta the queen.
The night is gone, and dreadful day begins at length to appear. And Phoebus, all bedimmed with clouds, himself aloft doth rear, and gliding forth with deadly hue, a doleful blaze in skies, doth bear great terror and dismay to the beholder's eyes. Now shall the houses void be seen, with plague devoured quite, and slaughter that the night hath made shall day bring forth to light. Doth any man in princely throne rejoice? O brittle joy! How many ills, how fair a face, and yet how much annoy in thee doth lurk, and hidden lies. What heaps of endless strife! They judge amiss that deem the prince to have the happy life. For as the mountains huge and high the blustering winds withstand, and craggy rocks the belching floods do dash and drive from land, though that the seas in quiet are, and calm on every side, so kingdoms great all winds and waves of fortune must abide. How well shunned I, my father dear, Polybius' sceptres late, exiled, bereft of careful fear, in pilgrim's happy state. I call the gods to witness this, and stars that glide in skies. A kingdom is befallen to me. I fear lest thereof rise a mischief, mighty Jove, too great. I fear, alas, I fear, lest these my hands have reft the life of thee, my father dear. Apollo bids me this beware, and yet a mischief more foretells.
Can any greater be than that you told before? A father slain by son's own hand?
O thrice unhappy state! With horror all dismayed, I stand in dread of threatened fate. I am ashamed my destiny's foul, O queen, to thunder out, and openly to blaze my fear my trembling mind doth doubt. Yet out it goes. Phoebus me bids my mother's bed to fly, as though that I, her son, with her incestuously should lie. This fear, and only this, me caused my father's kingdom great for to forsake. I fled not thence when fear the mind doth beat. The restless thought still dreads the thing it knows can never chance. Such fancies now torment my heart, my safety to advance. And eke thine ever-sacred laws, O nature, for to keep a stately sceptre I forsook, yet secret fear doth creep within my breast, and frets it still with doubt and discontent, and inward pangs which secretly my thoughts asunder rent. So that no cause of dread I see, yet fear and dread I all, and scant in credit with myself my thoughts my mind appall, that I cannot persuaded be, though reason tell me no, but that the web is weaving still of my decreed woe, For what should I suppose the cause? A plague that is so general, and Cadmus' country wholly spoils and spreads itself through all, should me amongst so great a heap of plagued bodies spare, and we alone amongst the rest reserved to mischiefs are? O heavy hap! Bide I still alone the spoil to see, of cities great, of men, of beasts, by plague that wasted be. And thou, amongst so many ills a happy life to lead, couldst once persuade thyself, O wretch, without all fear or dread of Phoebus' secrets judgments too, and that in king's estate, thou infected hadst the air in such a filthy rate. Thou art the only cause of woe, by thee these evils rise, by thee to grave on such a sort the wretched people's plies. The fiery, flaming, frying heat afflicted hearts that wastes is not relieved as wont it was by cold and pleasant blasts. The gentle western winds have left with healthful puffs to blow, and now the fiery dog with blaze of boiling heat doth glow. The sun in Leo burns so hot, and so the earth doth broil, that floods and herbs are dried up, and naught remains but soil, so thoroughly scorched and stewed with heat that moisture all is gone. And now, amongst so many floods remains alas not one. The place is dry, or only seen the streams are drunken up. Then water that doth yet remain the soaking earth doth sup. The moon with clouds quite overcast, all sadly forth she glides, and doleful darksome shades of night the whole world overhides. No star on high at all doth shine, but black and hellish hue hath overshaded all the skies, whence deadly mists ensue. The corn that wonted was to grow and fruitfully to spring, now to the voided barns naught else but empty stalks doth bring. No part of all our kingdom is free from destruction, but all together run and rush to utter confusion. The old men with the young, alas, the father with the child the plague consumes. Both man and wife, all beasts, both tame and wild, are spoiled by the pestilence. No pomp at all remains that wonted was in funerals to ease the mourner's pains. Alas, this spoil of people made by plague hath dried mine eyes, and secretly within my breast the grief it boiling fries. And that wonted is to happen most extremest ills, my tears are dry, and glutting grief my wretched breast it fills. The crazed father bears the son unto their dampish graves, and after him with burden like the mother comes and raves, and even lamenting as they stand stark dead down both they fall. And mourners like new in like estate for them and theirs they call, who likewise in the midst of all their toil and painful pain do drop into the grave they digged, and so the place do gain that was prepared for others erst. A hell it were to hear the horror and the miseries that everywhere appear. A tomb is made for noble men, fast on the people die, and in their burdens fling. Great peers all unregarded lie, for lack of graves to ashes clean their bodies some do waste, and some half burnt do leave them there, and home away for haste they run, and more they fetch than wood, fire, grave, and all doth want, and down for very grief the wretched misers fall. No prayers avail, no art can help this raging plague to appease, for none almost is left alive each other's woe to ease. Before thine altars here, O God, my feeble hands I hold, requiring all my destinies at once with courage bold, and that by death I may prevent my country pressed to fall. For this and only this, O God, upon thy name I call. Let me not be the last that dies, the last that goes to grave. Grant this, and then, O mighty Jove, my full request I have. O cruel gods unkind, O more than thrice unhappy fates, that only me denied is that lights on all estates. I mean a speedy death. Alas, these evils to prevent, and deadly woe that do my heart with restless rage torment. Leave off thy blubbering, O fool. Fly these kingdoms soiled with rotten plagues and botches vile, and graves each where despoiled. All which diseases thou, unhappy guest, didst bring with thee. Dispatch, away, go hence, at least unto thy parents free.
What boots it, sir, these mischiefs? Great with piteous plaints to aggravate. stoutly to bear adversity, is fit for king's estate. When dread and danger most assail, when cruel cares do crush thy princely breast, then ought'st thou most to bear and bide the push down. 'Tis no point of courage stout to yield to fortune's frown.
Nay, fear could never cause me stoop, nor fortune cast me down. My manly mind was never thrall to vain and peevish fears, but evermore in each assault it princely courage bears. No, not 1,000 glistering swords, nor Mars himself in field can once dismay my countenance or cause my heart to yield. The very giants, fierce and huge, in fight withstand I dare. That monster Sphinx whose riddles through the world renowned are, could not dismay my dreadless heart, nor cause my courage slide. For all the terrors I behold, I did that fury bide. I saw him belching gobs of blood. I viewed full well the field, that all to spattered lay with blood, and bones quite overhealed. And yet when he on mountain's top, with mouthful huge to see, stood gaping all with greedy jaws to feed and prey on me, oft fluttering with his fearful wings, and shaking oft his rays, began full like a lion, fierce with threats me to assail, oft of whom straightway the riddle it rushed into mine ears. With roaring sound his wings he claps, the rock for haste he tears, destroying with my bowels still his greedy jaws to glut. But I full soon assoiled had the question that he put, and all the subtle points thereof, and twisted knots untwined.
Makes you wish for death too late and wave your words in wind. You might have died then, you know, for Sphinx so nobly slain. This kingdom unto you and yours forever shall remain.
The ashes of that monster vile against us doth rebel. That vile, misshapen, loathsome beast, that raving fiend of hell, is cause of all the plague that doth this mournful city smite. Now only this remains alone. If Phoebus' heavenly might can any means invent for us, or way of mercy make, whereby these burning plagues at length may haply chance to slake.
O more than thrice renowned stock of ancient Cadmus race! O mighty Thebes, city great! O heavy rueful case! Lo, now you lie all desolate, with plague devoured quite, both you and all your husbandmen. O miserable sight! O foul and fearful fate! Alas, what causeth all this aid? O God, whence springs this pestilence that us tormenteth so? No age, no shape, no form is spared, but all confounded lie. Thus happiest now the man I count, whose chance was first to die. For he hath shunned 1,000 ills, which wretched eyes have seen, and mischiefs great that us do press from him are taken clean. O God, withhold thy fury, thy plagues from us remove. Cease of afflicted souls to scourge, who thee both serve and love. Pour down on them diseases foul, that them deserved have. A guerdon just for sin, O God, this of thee we crave, and only this. We ask no more, the cause and all is thine. A thing not used of gods it is from pity to decline. My heart doth pant, and trembling cold all through my limbs doth run, as oft as I remembering count the noble stocks undone by death and doleful destinies that overwhelming die, and yet, alas, the people still to grave do faster hie. In long array, all in a rank, by thousands on a row, on every side, in every street, to burial fast they go. The 7 broad wide open gates, they are not enough for way, but thronged the people, pestered, stand still in fearful stay, and in the midst of all their toil, with corpses on their backs. The number that before doth post, the hinder number slacks. The corpses in the streets do lie, and grave is made, but all in vain. For naught it boots the plague, it cannot be stayed. The sacrifices done to gods have too ill success, and such strange sights and signs do rise that naught else I can guess, but at hand with ghastly pause is utter destruction, with 1,000 ills accompanied and extreme confusion. The sheep of rot by heaps as thick as dogs do fall and die, and belching out their wasted lungs on ground do sprawling lie. And I myself of late did see a sight unseen before, as our high priest stood sacrificing at the temple door, and strake with grievous bloody wounds the golden horned bull, when down with lifeless lump he drops, and members made full dull, and all the wound wide bleeding gapes, and black gored blood out spews. And yet the blade unsprinkled was, the blood it boiling stews, and bubbles on the ground. Alas, what do these things portend? O mighty Jove, at length vouchsafe some good and happy end. At length withhold thy hand, O God, and health unto us send. Nothing, alas, remains at all in wonted old estate, but all are turned top-set down, quite void and desolate. The fainting horse for sudden pain from back his burden turns, and after on his master's breast his lifeless limbs he squats, who cries for help, but all in vain. The beasts in field that bide, unkempt, unknown ways and path do range and overstride. The bull, for lack of food and meat, in field all fainting lies, and all his flock, dispersed quite, in seely shepherd dies. The herdsman, eke among his beasts, his fatal breath expires, and to the heavens with piteous cries commends his last desires. The harts, without all fear of wolves, do lie in wretched peace. The rage and wrathful roaring sounds of ramping lions cease. The vengeance wild, outrageous bears are now as tame as sheep. The ugly serpent that was wont the rocky dens to keep, oft quaffing poisoned venom sups, in inward heap she boils, and all inflamed and scorched in vain for longer life she toils. The woods are not adorned now with fresh and lively hue, the wonted shades are gone. All things are quite out of their due. No greenish grass on ground doth grow. The earth no moisture sups. The vine without and any sap his drowsy head down droops. What shall I say? All things, alas, are written out of worse and out of course, and as they seem to me to fare still worse and worse. O mighty God above, when end these ever-during ills? When cease these plagues that guiltless blood thus fierce and raging spills? I think but we, almost alive, there do no men remain, whom doleful darts of destinies on earth have left unslain. I think the darksome shades of hell, where filthy floods do flow, where plagues and vile diseases too, where dreadful horrors grow, and all the furies, breast and loose, do mischief on us throw, with botch and bane of sundry kinds, with southern blasts do blow, and wretchful vexed hags of hell do breath on us and on us bring. The angry fiends of hell, I think, their vengeance on us fling, and out their mortal poison spew, which they against us bear. Lo, see how greedy death on us with scowling eyes doth leer. See, O Jove, how fast he throws his darts! Not one he spares, but all confounds. His threatening force withstand no creature dares. No doubt the loathsome ferryman, the sinful souls that train through stinking floods his labour loathes that he for us sustains. Such press by plumps to him is made, which still renews his pains. But hark! Yet monsters more than these the fame abroad to fly, that hellish dogs with brawling sound were heard to howl and cry, and yet the ground with trembling shook, and under feet did move, and dreadful blazing comets bright were seen in skies above, and ghastly shapes of men besides to wander on the ground, and wood and trees on every side did fearfully resound. Besides all this, strange ghosts were seen in place where they stood, and rivers more than one or two that ran all black gored blood. O cruel plague, O vile disgrace, far worse than speedy death! O we unhappy thrice and more, who do prolong our breath in these accursed days and times! But hark! to me, a while. When first this loathsome plague begins, these misers do defile, it takes them thus. A fearful cold through all their bones doth run, and cold and heat together mixed, their senses all benumb. Then little loathsome marks appear, and all their bodies spot, and all their members flaming glow, and burning fast do rot. The lights, the lungs, the heart, the guts, and all that inward lies, and all the secret parts is scorched with deadly fire fries. The blood all clotted in their cheeks in cluster lies by lumps, and it and heat together makes great strange and ruddy bumps, and blood and flesh congealed stands in faces stiff as stake, and eyes in head fast fixed set, and often trickling make, and down apace whole floods they stream, and clots and drops do trill, and all the skin from off their face by flakes and scales do pill. 1,000 fearful sounds at once into their ears do rush, and loathsome blood out of their nose by stilling streams doth gush. The very anguish of their heart doth cause them for to shake, and what with pain and heat and fear their wearied limbs do quake. Then some the running rivers haunt, and some on ground do wallow, and some again their thirst to slake, cold water gulping swallow. Thus all our country tossed with with plague in grief it waltering lies, and still desiring for to die 1,000 deaths it dies. But God to hear them then is pressed, and death to none denies. Besides all this, the church some do frequent, but not to pray, but only for to glut the gods with that they do say. But who is this that comes to court in haste with posting pace? What is Creon, that noble prince for deeds and stately race? Or doth my mind, oppressed with care, things false for true contrive? Creon, it is long looked for, his sight doth me revive. Act 2, Scene 1, Oedipus and Creon.
For fear my body chills, alas, and trembling all I stand, in quaking dread I seek and toil these mischiefs to withstand. But all in vain I spend my thoughts. It will not be, I see, as long as all my senses thus by cares distracted be. My mind desirous still, O God, the truth for to unfold, with doubtful dread is daunted so that it can scant uphold itself. O brother dear, if way or mean of health thou know, declare it out, and stick not all the truth to me to show.
The oracle, most noble king, is dark and hidden lies.
Who doubtful health to sick men brings, all health to them denies.
Apollo's use it is the troth and darksome dens to hold.
And Oedipus of gods it hath things hidden to unfold. Speak out, tell all, and spare not, man, all doubts I can discuss.
Apollo then, most noble king, himself commanded thus, by exile purge the prince's seat, and plague with vengeance due that hapless wretch whose bloody hands of late King Lais slew. Before that this performed be, no hope of milder air. Where do for this, O king, or else all hope of help to spare?
Durst any man on earth attempt that noble prince to slay? Show me the man, that I may him dispatch out of the way.
God grant I may it safely tell, the hearing was so terrible. My senses all amaze me. It is a thing so horrible, that I abhor to utter it. O God, for fear I quake, and even at the very thought my limbs begin to shake. As soon as Apollo's church, has entered in afraid, upon my flat face down I fell, and thus to him I prayed. O God, if ever thou didst drew on wretched miser state, if ever men oppressed thou eased, or didst their cares abate, if ever thou in present need didst present help declare, if ever thou afflicted hearts with cares consumed did spare, show now thy wonted clemency and pity known of yore. Scant had I said, resounding all the mountains thundering roar, and filthy fiends spout out their flames out of their darksome caves, and woods do quake and hills do move upon the surging waves, do mount onto the skies aloft, and I amazed I stand. Still looking for an answer at Apollo's sacred hand, when out with ruffled hair disguised the prophet comes at last. And when that, she said, felt the heat of mighty Phoebus blast, all puffing out she swells in rage, and pattering still she raves. And scant she entered had into Apollo's shining caves, when out a thundering voice doth burst that's far above man's reach. So dreadful seemed then to me that the mighty Phoebus' speech, then thus he spake, and thus at length into mind's care he rushed. While sprawling still the prophet lay before the doors of dust, the Theban city never shall be free from the plagues, quoth he. Except from thence the king-killer forth will expose be, unto Apollo known he was, or ever he was born. Do this, or else no hope of health to this the gods have sworn. And as for thee, thou shalt not long in quiet state endure, but with thyself wage war thou shalt, and war thou shalt procure. Unto thy child dear, and creep again thou shalt into thy mother's womb.
Look, what the gods commanded have accomplished shall be, nor never shall these eyes of mine abide the day to see. A king of kingdom spoiled by force, by guile or craft suppressed, a king, 2 kings, the prop ought be, and chiefest cause of rest. No man regards his death at all, whom living he doth fear.
Great cause makes me, my prince's death conceal and closely bear.
Ought any cause of fear or grief the duty for to let?
The threatening of the prophecies do still my breast beset.
Let us, sith God commands, forthwith some good atonement make, if any way or means there be their wrathful rage to slake. Thou, God, that sits on seat on high, and all the world dost guide, and thou, by whose commandment the stars in skies do glide, thou, that only ruler art of seas, of floods, and all, on thee and on thy Godhead great for these requests I call. Whoso hath slain King Laius, O Jove, I do thee pray, let 1,000 ills upon him fall before his dying day. Let him no health ne comfort have, but all too crushed with cares, consume his wretched years in grief, and though that death him spares a while, yet mischiefs all at length upon him light. Yet with all the evils under sun that ugly monster smite, in exile let him live, a slave the rated course of life. In shame, in care, in penury, in danger and in strife, let no man on him pity take, let all men him revile. Let him his mother's sacred bed incestuously defile, let him his father kill, and yet let him do mischiefs more. What thing more heinous can I wish than that I wished before? Let him do all these ills, I say, that I have shunned and passed. All those and more, if more may be, O God, upon him cast. Let him no hope of pardon have, but sue, and all in vain, and all hellish furies on him light, for to increase his pain. O Jove, power down thy fury great, thy thundering thumps outthrow. Let Boreas boisterous blasts and stormy plagues upon him blow. Consume him quite, fret out his guts with pox and botches vile. Let all diseases on him light that wretched bodies file. Let these and more, if more may be, upon that monster fall. Let harpies pause, and greedy paunch devour his members all. Let no man him regard, or seek his limbs in grave to lay, but let him die 10,000 deaths before his dying day. By this my kingdom I do swear, and kingdom that I left, by all my country gods that been in temples closely kept, I swear, I vow, I do protest, and thereto witness take the stars, the seas, the earth, and all that e'er thy hand did make, except that I myself forthwith this bloody monster find, to wreak the wrath of God some way with solemn oath I bind. And so my father Polybius his happy days outlive, and so my mother Merope no marriage new contrive, as he shall die that did this deed, and none shall him excuse. Whoso he be, here I protest for that he shortly ruse. But where this wicked deed was, Don Creon, now tell me plain, both or where this wicked deed was done, Creon, now tell me plain, both by what means and where and how King Laius was slain.
Passing through Castalia woods and mountains heaped with snow, where groves and scrubs and brushes thick and brambles sharp do grow. A three-path crooked way there is that diversely doth go. One unto Bacchus' city bends, that feach doth height, and the other Olanius, forth stretcheth out all right. The third that reacheth through the vales and by the river lies, tends down unto the banks whereby Aelia water plies. There unawares, O piteous chance, a troop of thieves entraps the noble prince and murders him, hence spring these great mishaps, which heaps you round with hideous woes and plagues on every side. By just decree of heavenly powers, which can no murder abide. But see Teiresias, where he comes with old and trembling pace, I think Apollo's heavenly might have brought him to this place. See where he goes, and Manto too, his steps directing stays. 'Tis he who for your grace, O king, for that your country's praise.
And Act 2, Scene 2, Teiresias, Manto join Oedipus.
Come, holy priest, to Phoebus next those doubtful answers lose, and whom these doubtful answers glows, I think, and whom the destinies will to die straight ways to me disclose.
Renowned prince, though still I stand in silence, dumb, dismayed, and though by inward fear of mind my lingering tongue is stayed, yet pardon me, O noble prince, and give me leave a while. From lack of sight springs ignorance, which power hath to exile unspotted truth from doubtful breasts. This thing full well you know, but whither God and country calls, with willing mind I go. Let deadly fatal destinies be bolted out at length. If, O king, if I of greener years had now my wonted strength, this matter soon discussed should be, and I would take in hand myself in presence of the gods in temple, for to stand a mighty ox, all coloured white, upon the altar's rear, which never yet on wearied neck the crooked yoke did bear. And Manto, thou, O daughter mine only prop and stay, the secret hidden mysteries and sacred signs outsay.
The beast before the altar stands.
To gods a prayer make, and on the holy altars eke some pleasant odours shake.
This done, and all the fires fierce with intense bright do flame.
O Manto, now what signs seest thou? How do thy matters frame? What, doth the fire, the sacrifice encompass round about?
Not so, but first it mounts aloft, and straight it flashes out.
Ah, well, yet how doth the sacred flame, all shining bright and clear, itself on high and to the skies with sparkling flames uprear? Or doth it oft rebounding back itself from skies unfold? Or all with rumbling, roaring noise about the places rolled? Or dimmed with smoke is tossed from place to place, now here, now there?
Not one, but diverse colours mixed with the flames doth with it bear, much like unto the rainbow, which with sundry paints hues foreshadows unto the husbandmen the weather that ensues. What colour it was, or what it hath to me, it likes like uncertain. Now it is black, now blue, now red, and even now again quite out of it is. Yet once again all fierce it flashing flames, but lo, yet mischiefs more than this, unluckily it frames. The fire quite asunder parts, and flame with flame does fight. O Father, I abhor to see this ugly loathsome sight. The wine to blood is turned quite, and all the prince's head with thick black clouds encompassed is, with smoke all overspread. O Father, tell what this portends.
What should I tell, alas? My mind for fear astonished stands, and trembling cold doth pass through all my limbs. What shall I say? Where shall I begin? O cruel plagues, O wreckful gods, O vengeance due for sin, some dire and bloody deed, alas, these hideous signs declare. What's that the gods should have revealed, and yet do bid beware to utter it? By certain signs their wrath is oft descried. Such signs appear, and yet they seem their fury great to hide. They are ashamed. I wot know what. Come hither, quickly bring some salt with thee, and it upon the sacrifice to fling. What? Are their looks pleasant and mild, and do they gently bide the touching of thy sacred hands?
What may be this thing betide? The bull, a wonder great to see, his head on high he lifts, and turns still unto the east, from thence it shifts. Still loathing, as he seems to me, of heaven to see the light, of scowling with his blaring eyes, with ghastly rueful sight.
But doth one blow them drive to ground, or more the one they have?
The heifer, as it seems, enflamed with courage stout and brave, upon the mortal blade did rush, and there herself destroys. When out the blood in foaming spouts and mounts unto the skies, the brawny bull twice stroke or thrice with grovelling groaning tries, and toiling up and down he moils, and still to live desires, and yet at length with much ado his brutish breath expires.
What? Doth the wide wound open gape, or is it closed up, or doth the deepness of the hole the blood in soaking up?
Out of the wounded heifer's breast black bluish waters rush. As for the bull, but little blood out of his wounds doth gush. It backs rebounds, and from his mouth and eyes by streams do flow. But what these dreadful signs portain, the gods alone do know.
Oh, by this unhappy sacrifice great fears within me rise. But tell me now, in the inner parts, what secret hidden lies?
Oh, Father, what means this? Alas, that more that wanton guise the innards, sir, stir and shake my hands, and heaving off arise. The blood by streams out of veins full strangely skips aloft. The heart all scorched and hidden lies, and strikes are seen full oft. Of colour, very vain, wan and pale, and chiefest parts do want the liver blackish gall outspurts, and somewhat rising pants. And that mischief great to kingdoms doth foreshow. Two heads are seen, and yet both heads one skin doth overgrow. The overheads them quite, but yet still the skin it is so thin that easily one may discern that what lieth hid therein, and that which horror doth increase, a man may plainly see how both the heart, the light, the lungs, and all disturbed be. A fearful noise and sound you hear is not of beasts but fire, that roaring on the altars make persuaging wreakful ire of angry gods, who do foretell some purpose that they have. For to revenge some foul misdeed, the avengers must just doth to crave, no part his proper place observe, nor keep his order due, but altogether quite disguised with unwanton hue. Mishappen out of frame transforms displayed quite, alas. What thing is that the gods intend ere long to bring to pass?
Why then, declare from whence and why these deadly signs arise. With courage stout I will it hear, it shall not once agrise my valiant mind. Extremest ills have power to banish fear.
You will wish that unheard which you so much desire to hear.
Yet since the gods will have him known, tell me, I say, his name that slew your king.
Nor wing nor womb of bird or beast ye same can tell, O king. New sacrifice, new means we must invent. From dreadful dark infernal damps some fury must be sent, these mischiefs great for to unfold. Or else King Ditis, he that empire keeps on grisly ghosts entreated needs must be, these things forthwith for to disclose. Tell who shall have the charge. A king thou art, then mayst thou not go through those kingdoms large.
Then, noble Creon, thou shalt go. This pain is first for thee, who must this crown and kingdom great enjoy after me.
Act 3, Scene 1, Oedipus and Creon.
Though that thy face, where sadness sits in heavy mourning guise, naught else portend but deadly griefs and mischiefs still to rise, yet tell some means whereby at length the gods we may appease, and purchase to our kingdom's waste some hope of health and ease.
Alas, you bid me that disclose, which fear doth bid me hide.
If that the Theban cities great by doleful plagues destroyed pierce not thy heart, yet oughtest thou these kingdoms for to rue, which were unto thy brother's house of ancient title due.
You wish the thing to know, which you will wish unknown at length.
Why so? A simple remedy of little force and strength is ignorance of our estate when dangers us betide. But what, wilt thou so great a good for common safety hide?
Irksome medicines and perilous in sickness I abhor.
And I, likewise, at subjects' hands disdain to take a door. Speak out with speed, or else by proof of torment thou shalt find how dangerous a case it is to gall a prince's mind.
Kings often use to wish untold which they bade tell before.
Go to, dispatch, and cease in time to vex me any more. Except that thou forthwith to me this heinous deed disclose, the gods I do protest, to death for all thou only goes.
O pardon me, most noble king, O let me hold my peace. Of all the graces princes grant, what favor may be less?
As though the silence hurts not more both king and country's weal, than speech oft times, which subjects' thoughts to princes doth reveal. Dispatch at once, stir me no more, thou know'st my guise of old.
Silence denied. What privilege may silly subject hold?
A traitor he is who silence keeps when king commands to speak.
Then pardon my constrained speech, sith silence for to break you me to compel. A doleful tale, O king, my tongue must tell, in which I fear your majesty will not interpret well.
Was ever man rebuked for that which he was bid to say?
Well, since need I must, I am contented to obey. A wood there is from city far, enhanced with stately trees, where many a plant and herb doth grow, where Phoebus never sees. With ever during bushes green, the cypress there doth rise, and puts his old and lofty head within the cloudy skies. The ancient time-eaten oak with crooked bended limbs, the teal, tree fine, the alder which in Neptune's kingdom swims, the bays with bitter berries, eke the elms, dear friend to vines, and many a noble tree besides in myrtles, firs, and pines. Amidst them, one tree there is, with large outstretched arms, whose roaring sound and cracking noise the lesser woods I charms, and overshades them all, a tree of monstrous huge estate, beset with fearful woods, there is that dire and dreadful gate that leads to loathsome Limbo Lake and pits that ever flow, where choked mirrored mud doth stream with slimy course full slow. Here when the priest was entered in with calmly aged pace, he stayed not. No need there was, for night was still in place. Then all the ground open gapes, and smoldering vapors rise, and fire and smoke and stifling stink mounts up onto the skies. The priest with wailing weed I clad, his fatal rod outtook, and entering in black array, full oftentimes it shook. With heavy cheer and doleful pace, his hoary head with twined with boughs of mortal yew, a tree wherewith the mourners wind their mourning heads and garlands make. In this guise, all arrayed, the sacred priest doth enter in, with trembling limbs dismayed. Then in the sheep and oxen black, by backward course are drawn, and odors sweet and frankincense on flaming fires are thrown. The beasts are burning, altars cast, do quake with scorched limbs, and bloody streams with fire mixed about the altar swims. Then on the dark infernal gods and him that rules them all, with deadly shrieking voice aloud, the prophet gins to call, and rolls the magic verse in mouth, and hidden arts doth prove, which either power hath to appease, or else the gods to move, them bloody streaming liquors black, with broiling heat to boil, and all the beasts consume and burn. The prophet then a toil begins, and mixed wine and the milk upon the altars throws, and all the dungeon black and wide with streaming blood it flows. Then out with a thundering voice again with the prophet calls and cries, and straight as much with mumbling mouth he champs in secret wise, the trees do turn, the rivers stand, the ground with roaring shakes, and all the world as seems to me with fearful trembling quakes. I am heard, that out loud the priest began to cry. When all the damned souls by heaps abroad out rushing fly, then woods with rumbling noise do oft resounding make, and heaven and earth together go, and boughs and trees do quake, and thunders roar, and lightnings flash, and waves aloft do fly, and the ground retires, and dogs do bawl, and beasts are heard to cry. And whither long of Chiron, that loathsome flood that flows, all stinking streams, or of the earth that out her bowels throws, free place to sprites to give, or of that fierce infernal hound, that at such time doth bustling mix with chains and railing sound, that earth all wide open scapes. And I did see on ground the gods with color pale and wane, that those dark kingdoms keep. And very night I saw indeed in thousand shapes to creep from out those filthy, stinking lakes, the lonesome pits of hell, where all the evils under sun and darksome shades do dwell. So, quaking all for the fear, I stood with mine right sore appalled, whilst on those gods with trembling mouth the priests full often called, who all at once, out of their dens, did skip with gritty face, and monsters grim, and stinging snakes seemed wander in that place, and all the foulest fiends of hells and furies all were there, and all transformed ghosts and sprites, and that ever hell did bear with cares and all diseases vile that mortal minds do crush, all those and more I saw out of those dungeons to rush. The age I saw with rivaled face, and need, and fear, and death, and fire, and flames, and thousand ills outfro those pits to breath. Then I was gone and quite amazed. The wench in worse her case, and yet of old acquainted with her father's art she was. The priest himself unmoved stood, and boldly cited out whole armies of King Didymus men, who clustering in a rout, all flittering thin like clouds, dispersed abroad in air do fly, and bearing sundry shapes and forms do scud about in sky. 1,000 woods, I think, have not so many leaves on trees. 10,000 meadows fresh have not so many flowers for bees. 10,000 rivers, not so many fowl can show, nor all the drops and streams and gulfs that in the sea do flow. If that they may be weighed, can sure so great a number make, as could those shapes and forms that flew from out of Limbo Lake. Both Tantalus and Zetus too, and pale Amphium's ghost, and Agave, and her 10,000 sprites do post. Then Pentheus and more in like estate ensue, till out of length comes Laius with foul and grisly hue, uncommonly dressed in wretched plight, with filth all overgrown, all pierced with wounds, I loathe to speak, with blood quite overflown. A miser right, as seemed to me, and most of misers all. Thus in this case at length he spake, and thus began to call. O Cadmus, cruel city vile, that still delightest in blood. O Cadmus, thou, with kinsman's death, accountest as chiefest good. Tear out the bloody bowels of your children, learn of me. Do that and rather move than you would bide a day to see. Like ills as late on me are light, lo mother's love, alas, hath caused the greatest misery that e'er in Theba was. The counting with the wrath of gods at this time is not tossed, nor earth and nor air infect is not the cause that all had been lost. No, no, a bloody king is cause of all of these mischiefs great, a bloody wretch, a wretched child that sits in his father's seat, a mother's bed defiles, O wretch, and entereth in again, in places whence he came from once, and doubleth so her pain. Whilst that he fills the hapless womb, wherein himself did lie, with graceless seed, and causeth her twice childbirth pangs to try. Unhappy son, but father worse, and must unhappy be, by whom the laws of sacred shame so sore confounded be. For that very beast almost do all abhor to do, even of his mother's body he hath brothers gotten too. O mischief great, O dreadful deed, the Sphinx, O monster more, examples unto ages all of gods foretold before. But I thee, that scepter holdest, thy father will pursue, and wreak myself on thee and thine with plagues and vengeance too. All restless rage of spite and pain, I will upon thee blow, and all the furious fowl of hell upon thee I will throw. I will subvert thy houses clean for this thy loathsome lust. I will do this, thou wretch, and thee and thine consume to dust. Wherefore, dispatch at once, I say, into exile drive your king. That ground that first of all he leads with fresh green grass still shall spring, and sweet and pleasant air and healthful blast shall rise, and all the evils under sun that mortal men surprise. The pox, the piles, the botch, the blame, the death with him shall fly, and with him mischiefs all shall pass and monsters under sky. And as for him, I know he would depart with unwilling mind, but I will clog his feet and hands, his way he shall not find. But groping with his aged staff shall pass from place to place. This shall he do, and none shall rue upon his ruthful case. Rid you the monster from the earth, from heaven let me alone. No sooner said, but straightway his dreadful ghost was gone. And fast by thousands after him, thought or sprites and hide. Then cold and trembling fear began through all my bones to glide.
The thing I always feared, I see upon me now is laid. But slender props they are, God wot, whereby your treason is stayed. Miropa, my mother dear, shall me from this defend. Polybius eke shall purge me quite from actions all that tend to murder or to incest vile. They both shall me excuse. In such a case no means at all of trial I refuse. Lay what you can unto my charge, no fault in me remains. The Thebans long or I came here of Laius' death complains. My mother is yet alive, my father still in like estate. No, this is some doltish drift of yon false prophet's pate, or else some mighty god above doth bear me no good will, and seeks by plagues on me to wreak his wrathful vengeance still. Ah, sir, I'm glad at length I smell your drifts and fetches fine. I know the whole confederacy, your sleights I can untwine. That beastly priest, that blear-eyed wretch belies the gods and me, and thee, thou traitor, in my place hath promised king to be.
Alas, would I, my sister, of her lawful kingdom spoil. Think you such treason may have place in brother's breast to boil? If that mine oath could be, not keep content with my degree, but that contemning me in this state, I would climb aloft to be. Yet should ill fortune me deter from such attempts I trow, whose guise it is on princes' heads huge heaps of cares to throw, I would advise your grace betimes this charge from you to cast, least lingering long all unawares, you be oppressed at last. Assure yourself in baser state, more safer you may live, and shun 1,000 cares and griefs with which princes' hearts do rive.
And dost thou me exhort, thou slave, my kingdom for to leave? O faithless head, O shameless heart that could such treasons weave! Darest thou attempt, thou villain vile, this thing to me to break? And fearst thou not in such a cause so boldly for to speak?
I could persuade them so, O king, who freely might possess their realm. Such piteous cares I see do princes' hearts oppress. But as for you of force, you must your fortune's change abide.
The surest way for them that gape for kingdoms large and wide is first things mean and rest and peace and base estate to praise, and yet with tooth and nail to toil to mount aloft always. So oftentimes most restless beasts do chiefly rest commend.
Shall not my service long suffice my truth for to defend?
Time is the only means for such as thou to work their will.
It is so, sir, but as for me, of goods, I have my fill. A great resort, a pleasant life, from princely cares exempt. All these might surely me dissuade from such a foul attempt. There is no day, O king, the whale year thorough out, wherein some royal gifts are not from countries round about. Unto me sent, both gold and pearls and things of greater cost, which I let pass, least I should seem, but vainly for to boast. Besides the life of many a man hath been preserved by me, in such a blissful state, O king, what can there wanting be?
Good fortune can no mean observe, but still she presseth higher.
Shall I then guiltless die? Alas, my cause and I all untried.
Were unto you at any time my life, my deeds descried? Did any man defend me yet, or else my causes plead? And guiltless yet I am condemned. To this you do me lead, and me express example give, which I intend to take. What measure you do mete to me, like measure must I make.
The mind which causeless dread appalls, true cause of fear bewrays, that conscience is not guiltless sure, which every blast dismays.
He that in midst of perils deep and dangers hath been cast, doth seek all means to shun like ills as he hath overpast.
So hatreds rise.
He that too much doth use ill will to bear unskilful is, and knows not how he ought himself to bear in king's estate. For fear alone doth kingdoms chiefly keep, than he that doth. For fear alone doth kingdoms chiefly keep, than he that thus doth arm himself from fear, all free may sleep.
Why, so the cruel tyrant plays, and guiltless men doth smite? He dreadeth them that him do dread, so fear doth chiefly light. On causers chief, a just revenge for bloody minds at last.
Come take this traitor vile away, in dungeon deep him fast enclose. There for his due deserts let him abide such pain and scourge of mind, as meet it is false traitors to sustain.
See the miserable state of Prince's careful life. What raging storms, what bloody broils, what toil, what endless strife. Do they endure? O God, what plagues, what grief do they sustain? A princely life, no doubt has ever during pain. A state unfit for men of whom fortune would wreak her will, a place for cares to couch them in, a door wide open still. For griefs and dangers all that bend to enter when they list, a king these mates must ever have, it boots not to resist. Whole floods of privy pinching fear, great anguish of the mind, apparent plagues and daily griefs their playfers princes find, and other none with whom they spend and pass their wretched days. Thus he that princes lives and base estates together weighs, shall find the one of very hell a perfect infelicity. The other eke a heavy right, exempt quite from misery. Let Oedipus' example be to this and to you all, a mirror meet, a pattern plain of prince's careful thrall, who late in perfect joy it seems and everlasting bliss, triumphantly his life outled, a miser now he is. And most of wretched misers all, even at this present time, with doleful waves of fear I tossed subject to such a crime. Whereat my tongue amazed stays, God grant that at the last it fall not out as Creon told, nor yet the worst is past, I fear.
And we're into Act 4, Scene 1, Oedipus and Jocasta.
My mind with doubtful waves of dread is tossed to and fro. I wot not what to say, alas, I am tormented so. For all the gods on me do cry, for pains and vengeance due. They say that these my guiltless hands King Laius lately slew. But this my conscience void of crime, and mind from mischief free, to gods untried, to me well known, denies it so to be. Full well I do remember once by chance I did dispatch a man who sought by force with me presumptuously to match. His purpose was a fond attempt my chariot for to stay. This I remember well enough, the strife was in the way, and he a man well steeped in years, and I a lusty blood, and yet of mere disdain and pride in vain he me withstood. But this from Thebes far was done, a crooked three-pathed way. That was the place in which we fought, it hard by Phocis lay. Dear wife, resolve my doubts at once, and me expressly tell how old was Laius the king when this mischance befell. Was he of fresh and lusty years, or stricken well in age when he was killed? Oh, ease my thoughts of this tormenting rage.
Betwixt an old man and a young, but nearer to an old.
Were there great bands of men with him, his person to uphold?
Some by the way deceived were, and some deterred by pain. A few by toil and labour long did with their prince remain.
Were any slain in his defence?
Of one report is rife, who constant in his prince's cause full stoutly lost his life.
It is enough. I know the man that hath this mischief done. The number and the place agrees, the time untried alone remains. Then tell what time he died, and when that he was slain.
'Tis 10 years since. You now revive my chiefest cares again.
Act 4, Scene 2, Senex approaches.
The Corinth people all, O king, in father's place to reign, go call your grace, Phorbas doth eternal rest obtain.
O God, what fortune vile doth me oppress on every side? How do my sorrows still increase? Tell how my father died.
No sickness, sir, but very age did of his life him reave.
And is he dead indeed? Not slain? What joy I may conceive! How may I now triumph? The gods to witness I do call, to whom are known my hidden thoughts and secret workings all. Now may I lift to skies my hands, from mischief free. But yet the chiefest cause of fear remaineth still to me.
Your father's kingdom ought all dread out of your mind to drive.
That I confess. But secret thoughts my trembling heart do rive with inward doubt of deep distress. My mother do I fear. This grudge is it that continually my heart doth rent and tear.
Do you your mother fear, or your return that only stays?
I fear not her, but from her sight a godly zeal me frays.
What will you her a widow leave?
Now thou woundest heart. This, and only this, alas, is cause of all my smart.
Tell me, O king, what doubtful fear doth press thy princely breast? King's counsel I can well conceal, that ben with cares oppressed.
Lest, as Apollo hath foretold, I should a marriage make with mine own mother, only this foul fear doth make me quake.
Such vain and peevish fears, at length from out your breast exile. Europa, your mother, is not indeed, you do yourself beguile.
What vantage should it be to her adopted sons to have?
A kingdom she shall gain thereby, a husband laid in grave, the chiefest prop to stay her realms from present confusion. In children for to have and hope of lawful succession.
What are the means whereby thou dost these secrets understand?
Myself, your grace, an infant gave into your father's hand.
Didst thou me to my father give? Who then gave me to thee?
A shepherd, sir, that wanted on Scythian hills to be.
What made thee in those woods to range? What hadst thou there to do?
Upon those hills my beasts I kept, sometimes a shepherd too.
What notes, what privy marks hast thou whereby thou dost me know?
The holes that through your feet are broad, from whence your name did grow.
Declare forthwith what was his name that gave me unto thee.
The king's chief shepherd that was delivered you to me.
What was his name?
O king, old men's remembrance soon doth fail. Oblivion of the chiefest part doth hoary heads assail, and drowns their former memory of things long out of mind.
What, canst thou know the man by sight?
Perhaps I should him find, and know by face. Things overwhelmed by time and quite oppressed, a small mark oft to mind revokes, and fresh renews in breast.
Sirs, bid the herdmen forthwith drive their beasts to altars all. Away with speed, make haste the master shepherds to me call.
Sith that your destiny this doth hide, and fortune it detain, and closely keep, let it be so, for opening that refrain, that long concealed hath hidden lain, that seek not to disclose, such things outstretched and found oft time against the searcher goes.
Can any mischief greater be than this that now I fear?
Advise you well remember first that ways this thing both doth bear, and thus you go about to search and slit the tooth and nail, observe the golden mean. Beware, bear still an equal sail, your country's wealth, O king, your life, and all upon this lies, though you, sir, not be sure at length for fortune you escries, a happy state, for to disturb both naught and all behove.
When things be at the worst, of them a man may safely move.
Can you have naught more excellent than is a prince's state? Beware lest your parents found in you repent too late.
No, father, no, I warrant that. Repent not I trow. I seek it not to that intent. I have decreed to know the matter at the full, wherefore I will it now pursue. Lo, Phorbas, where he trembling comes with comely aged hue, to whom of all the king's flock then the care and charge was due. Dost thou his name, his speech, his face, or yet his person know?
Methinks I should have seen his face, and yet I cannot show the places where I have been. I have him seen. Same time brings such a change, as well acquainted faces oft to us appear still strange. This look is neither thoroughly known nor yet unknown to me. I cannot tell, I doubt it much, and yet it may be he. In latest time, long since, when these kingdoms great did keep, was not the Scythian hills chief shepherd to his sheep?
And we go into Act 4, Scene 3 with Phorbas, Senex, and Oedipus.
Sometime a charge of sheep I had, unworthy though I were, and did upon those hills chief rule on other shepherds bear.
Knowest thou not me?
I cannot tell.
Didst thou once give this man a child? Speak out. Why dost thou stay? If so, declare it then. Why dost thou blush and doubting stand? Truth seeketh no delay.
Things out of mind you call again, almost quite worn away.
Confess, thou slave, or else I swear thou shalt constrained be.
Indeed, I do remember once an infant, young by me, delivered was unto this man. But when I what in vain, I know he could not long endure, nor yet alive remain. And since he is dead, I know it well. He lives not at this day.
No, God forbid. He lives, no doubt, and long may he live, I pray.
Why dost thou say the child is dead that thou this man didst give?
With iron sharp his feet bored. I know he could not live, for of the sore a swelling rose. He saw the blood to gush from out both the wounds, and down by pouring streams to flush.
Now stay, O king, no farther now. You must almost the trough.
Whose child was it? Tell me forthwith.
Phoebus.
Phorbas. Phorbas.
Sorry, I lost me pages wrong with it. I dare not for mine oath.
Thine oath, thou slave! Some fire here, I'll charm thine oath and thee with fire and flames, except forthwith thou tell the truth to me.
Pardon me, rude I seem. I seek not to withstand your grace's mind, most noble king. My life in your hand.
Tell me the truth. What child and what was his mother's name?
Born of your wife.
Oh, gaping earth devour my body quite, or else thou, God, that ruler art of houses void of light, to hell my soul with thunderbolts, to hell my soul down drive, where grisly ghosts in darkness deep and endless pain do live. For thee alone these plagues do rage, for thee these mischiefs rise, for thee the earth lies desolate, for thee, thou wretch, the skies infected are, for thee, and for thy filthy lust. 100,000 guiltless men consumed are to dust. Oh, people cast heaps of stones upon this hateful head. Bathe all your swords within my breast, ye furies, overshed my restless thoughts with raging woes, and plunged in seats of pain. Let me these horrors still endure, which damned souls sustain. You citizens of stately Thebes, vex me with torments due. Let father, son, and wife, and all with vengeance me pursue. Let those that for my sake alone with plagues tormented be throw darts, cast stones, fling fire and flames and tortures all on me. O shame, O slander of the world, O hate of gods above, co-founder, O of nature, thou to laws of sacred love. Even from thy birth an open foe, thou didst deserve to die as soon as thou wast born. Go unto the court thee high therewith, thy mother, slave, rejoice, triumph as thou mayst do, who hast thy house increased with unhappy children. So make haste with speed, away, something thy mischiefs worthy find, and on thyself wreak all the spite of thy revenging mind.
Fortune, a guide of human life, doth all things charge at will, and stirring still with restless thoughts our wretched mind doth fill. In vain men strive the stars to keep, when heinous tempests rise, and blustering winds of dangers deep set death before their eyes. Who saith he doth have fawning feel, and changeth not his mind, when fickle fight fortune's wheel doth turn by course of kind. These grievous plagues from private house to princely thrones do flow, and often their minds with cares they scourge, and thick and oft them throw whole heaps of grief and dire debate, a woeful thing to see, a princely life to miser's state converted for to be. O Oedipus, thy fatal fall, thy dreadful mischiefs right, thy doleful state, thy misery, thy thrice unhappy plight. These things shall blaze through all the world, what heart may them rejoice, and they distressed. I can no more, my tears do stop my voice. But what is he that yonder stamps and raging puffs and blows, and often shakes his vexed head? Some mischief great he knows. Good sir, your countenance doth import some great and fearful thing. Tell us therefore, if thou may, what news from court you bring.
Act 5, a messenger approaches. Messenger sadly muted.
When Oedipus, accursed wretch, his fatal falls had spied, to hell be damned his wretched soul, and on the gods he cried for vengeance due. And posting fast with frantic mood and grisly hue, unto his doleful court he went, his thoughts for to pursue. Much like a lion, ramping wild, his furious head that shakes, and roars with thundering mouth aloud, and often lashing makes. None otherwise this miser fared. Loathsome sight to see, besides himself a very rage, he still desires to die, and rolling round his wretched eyes with visage pale and wan. 10,000 curses out he pours, himself the unhappiest man of all that live he doth account, as justly he may do. A wretch, a slave, a caitiff vile, the cause of all our woe, and in this case, inflamed with spite, he cries, he stamps, he raves, boiling in his secret thoughts, he still desires to have all torment under sun, that may his cares conceived increase. O wretched wight, what should he do? What man may him release? Thus foaming, all for rage of mouth, with sighs and sobs and groans, his damned head 10,000 times as oft his wearied bones he beats. And often puffing makes and roars and swells and sweats, and on the gods for death he calls, for death he still entreats. 3 times he did begin to speak, and thrice his tongue did stay. At length he cried out loud, away, O wretch, away, away. Away, thou monstrous beast, he said. Wilt thou prolong thy life? Nay, rather some man strike this breast with stroke of bloody knife. Are all you gods above on me your flaming fires outcast, and dints of thunderbolts down throw? This is my prayer last. For greedy, vile, devouring gripe upon my guts will gnaw. The tiger fierce my hateful limbs will quite asunder draw. Lo, here I am, you gods. Lee here, wreak now on me your will. Now, you fiery fiends of hell, of vengeance take your fill. Send out some wild, outrageous beast. Send dogs at me to devour, else all your ills you can devise at once upon me pour. Oh, woeful soul, oh, sinful wretch, dost thou fear to die? Death only rids from woes thou know'st. Then stately death defy with that his bloody fatal blade from out his sheath he draws, and loud he roars with thundering voice, Thou beast, why didst thou pause? Thy father cursed, caitiff thou, thy father thou hast slain, and in thy mother's bed hast left an ever-during stay. Brothers thou hast got, nay, sons thou liest, thy brothers all they are. That's for thy monstrous lust, thy country down doth fall. Think'st thou then for all these ills enough so sure to pay? Think'st thou the gods will all be appeased if thou forthwith be slain? So many mischiefs done, and is't enough one stroke to bite? Count'st thou it sufficient pains that once thy sword should glide quite through thy guilty breast? All! Why then dispatch and die, so as thou recompense thy father's death sufficiently? Let it be so. Friends unto thy mother wilt thou make, to thy children these plagues, O wretch, how wilt thou slake? Thus for thee thy country wastes. One push shall end all. A fetch, a fine device for thee, a worthy fall in that thou monstrous invent thou monstrous breast forthwith, a fall even worthy for thyself invent, whom all men hate and loathe and do abhor. And as Dame Nature's lawful courses broke, O wretch, by thee so let to such a mischief break thy death agreeing be. Oh, that I might 1,000 times my wretched life for you. Oh, that I might revive and die by course in order due 10,100,000 times and more than should I vengeance take upon this wretched head. Then I perhaps in part should make a meet amends indeed for this my foul and loathsome sin. Should the proof of pain reprove the life that I live in? The choice is in thine hand, thou wretch. Then use thine own discretion and find a means whereby you thou mayest come to extreme confusion, and that oft thou mayest so, and that often thou mayest not do, let it prolonged be. Thus. Mayst thou procure at length an endless death to thee, search out a death whereby thou mayst perpetual shame obtain and yet not die, but still to live in everlasting pain. Why stayest thou, man? Go to, I say, what mean this blubbering tear? Why weepst thou thus? Alas, too late, leave off thy foolish fears, and is't enough to weep things thou shall tears and wailings. Wretch, it shall not be, thou dost 10,000 deaths deserve. Mine eyes do dally with me, I see, and tears do still outpour. Shall tears suffice? No, not so. I shall then better scour out with thine eyes, he said. And then with fury fierce inflamed, like to a bloody raging fiend and monstrous beast untamed, With fiery, flaming, spotted cheeks his breast he often beats, and scratch and tear his face. He doth and skin asunder feats, and scarce his eyes in head could stand, so sore he them besets. Furious, fierce, outrageous mind, he stamps and cries aloud, and roars and rails with ramping rage. As in this case he stood perplexed and vexed, sore in mind, with deadly sighs and tears, when suddenly, all frantic like himself from ground, he rears and rooteth out his wretched eyes, and sight asunder tears, and gnasheth his teeth, bloody teeth, and bites and gnaws and champs. His eyes were bathed and brewed in blood, for fury fierce and stamp. Raging more than needs, alas, his eyes quite rooted out the very holes in vain. He screams so sore, this wretch doth doubt. His sight should chance for to remain, he rents and mangles quite his face, his nose, his mouth, and all whereon his hands do light. He rigs and writhes. As foully rayed, alas, in piteous plight, at length his head aloft he lifts, and therewith gives a shrike. And when he sees that all is gone, both light and sight and all, then screeching out he thus begins upon the gods to call. Now spare, you gods, now spare at length my country pressed to fall. I have done what you did command. Your wrath's revenged be. This wretched look, this mangled face is fittest now for me. Thus speaking down, the blackish blood by streams doth gushing flow into his mouth. Clotted lumps of flesh the place doth strew wherein he stands. Beware, betimes by him beware. I speak unto you all. Learn justice, truth, and fear of God by his unhappy fall.
Man's life with tumbling fatal course of fortune's wheel is rolled. To it give place, for it doth run all swiftly uncontrolled. And cares and tears are spent in vain, for it cannot be stayed. Sith high decree of heavenly powers perforce must be obeyed. What mankind biddeth or does on earth, it cometh from above, and then wailing groans poured out in grief doth naught at all behove. Our life must have her pointed course. Alas, what shall I say? As fate's decree, so things do run, no man can make them stay. For at our birth to gods is known our latter dying day. No prayer, no art, no, not God himself made fatal fates resist, but fastened all in fixed course, unchanged they may persist. Such end them still endures as they appointed were to have, then fly all fears of fortune change, seek not to live a slave, enthralled in bondage vile to fear, for fear doth often bring destinies that dreaded bane and mischief fear upon us fling. Yea, many a man hath care unto his fatal end by fear. Where therefore shall peevish fear aside, and worthy courage bear? And that thou that subject art to death, regard thy latter day. Think no man blessed before his end adviseth thee well and stay. Be sure this life and death and all be quite exempt from misery, ere thou do once presume to say, this man is blessed and happy. But out, alas, see where he comes, a wretched woe withouten guide, bereft of sight, half spoiled of life, without all pomp and pride, that on the king's estates belong.
Act 5, Scene 2, Oedipus, Chorus, and Jocasta.
Well, well, 'tis done. More yet? No, no, no mischiefs more remains. My father's rites performed are, what God on miser's pains that rules within this cloud hath rolled and wrapped my wretched pate. Ah, sir, this is a life alone. This is a happy state. This is a case even fit for thee, thou wretch, for thee, from whose accursed sight the sun and stars and all do flee. Yet mischiefs more, who gives to do? The dreadful day I have escaped. Thou filthy parricide, thou vile mischievous slave, unto thy right hand naught thou owest, all things performed be. Oh, woe is me that ere I lived this luckless day to see. Where am I now? Alas, alas, this light and all doth me abhor. O wretched Oedipus, this look is first for thee.
See where Jocasta comes, with fierce and furious mood, quite past herself. For every rage she frets and waxes wood, much like to Cadmus' daughter mad, who late her son did kill. Fain would she speak her mind, for fear, alas, she dares not still. She stays, and yet from out her breast these ills have quite exiled all shamefastness. See, she looks with countenance fierce and wild.
Would I speak? I'm afraid. For what should I thee call my son? Doubt not thou art my son, for thou art for all these mischiefs great. Alas, alas, I shame my son to see. No cruel son, where dost thou turn thy face? Dost thou flee from me, from thy mother dear? Why dost thou shun my sight and leave me thus in misery with cares consumed quite?
Who troubles me? Let me alone. I thought not to be found. Who now restores mine eyes to me? Mother, or mother's sound? Our labor all is spent in vain. Now we may meet no more. The seas divide those meetings vile that we have had before. The gaping earth divide us both, one from the other quite. Still let our feet repugnant be. So shall I shun the light that most of all me grieves. So shall I space obtain to wail these bleeding woes on every side that do my thoughts assail.
The destinies are in fault. Blame them, alas, alas, not we.
Spare now. Leave off to speak in vain. Spare now, O mother, me. By these relics of my dismembered body, I thee pray, by mine unhappy children pledges left. What shall I say? By all the gods, I thee beseech, by all that in my name is good or bad, let me alone. Alas, you are to blame to trouble me. You see what hell my hapless heart doth pain. You see that in my conscience 10,000 horrors reign.
O dying heart, O drown its soul, why dost thou faint, alas? Why dost thou seek and toil in vain these ills to overpass? I mean these sighs and scolding tears, why dost thou death refuse? Thou mate of all his mischiefs, thou by whose means only rules the law of nature all. By whom? Oh, confounded lies, both God and man and beast are all that either lives or dies. Die, thou! Dispatch at once, thrust through thy vile incestuous breast. Thou hast none of the means, alas, to set thine heart at rest. But thou, God himself, if he his flaming fire should throw on thee by our mischiefs, all by heaps upon thy bloody strew, could once for thy undeserved ills due pains or vengeance pay. Some means therefore to wreak God's wrath upon thyself essay. Death! Death now best contenteth thee. Contenteth me, then seek a way to die. So as thou yet at length find end for all thy misery. Son, lend me thy hand, sith that thou art a parasite, this labour last of foreign mains, this labour thee doth bind. Dispatch, rid me, thy mother dear, from all my deadly woe. It will not be. No prayers avail, thyself this deed must do. Take up this sword, go to, with this thy husband late was slain. Husband, thou term'st him false. He was thy sire. Oh, deadly pain shall I quite through my breast it drive, or through my throat it thrust. Canst thou not choose thy wound? Away! Die! Die! Alas, thou must. There's fruitful womb and wound of wretch this with thine own hand. Strike it hard, oh, spare it not. It's both the husband and the same a son it bare.
Alas, alas, she is slain, dispatched with such a push. Whoever saw this like to this, see how the blood doth gush. O heavy doleful case, who ran this direful sight endure, which of this hideous therefore tears of storms procure.
Thou God, thou teller out of fates, on thee I call. My father only I did owe unto the destinies all. Now twice a parricide, and worse than I did fear to be my mother. Have I slain? Alas, the fault is all in me. O Oedipus, accursed wretch, lament thine own calamity. Lament thy state, thy grief, lament, thou caitiff born to misery. Where wilt thou now become, alas? Thy face, where wilt thou hide? O miserable slave, canst thou such shameful torments bide? Canst thou, which hast thy parents slain, canst thou prolong thy life? Wilt thou not die, deserving death, thou cause of all the grief and plagues and dreadful mischiefs, all that Theban city press? Why dost thou seek by longer life thy sorrows to increase? Why dost thou toil and labor thus in vain? It will not be. Before both God and man and beast and all abhor thy face to see. O earth, why gapest thou not for me? Why do you not unfold yon gates of hell me to receive? Why do you hence withhold the fierce infernal fiends from me, so wretched wight? Why break not all the Furies loose this hateful head to smite with plagues which them deserved hath, alas? I'm left alone, both light and sight and comfort all from me, O wretch, is gone. O cursed head, O wicked wight, whom all men deadly hate, O beast, what mean'st thou still to live in this unhappy state? The skies do blush and are ashamed at these thy mischiefs great. The earth laments, the heavens weep, the seas for rage do fret and blustering rise, and storm do stir, and all, thou wretch, for thee, by whose incest and bloody deeds all things disturbed be. Quite out of course, displaced quite, O cursed fatal day, O mischiefs great, O dreadful times, O wretch. Away, away, exile thyself from all men's sight, thy life half spent in misery. Go end, consume it now outright in thrice as great calamity. O lying Phoebe, thine oracles my sin and shame surmount. My mother's death among my deeds thou never didst recount. A meet exploit for me that am to nature deadly foe. With trembling fearful pace, go forth, thou wretched monster, go. Grope out thy ways on knees in dark, thou miserable slave. So mayst thou yet in tract of time due pains and vengeance have for thy mischievous life. Thus, the gods themselves decree, thus, thy fates, thus, the skies appointed for to be. Then headlong hence with a mischief, hence, thou caitiff vile, away, 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 thou monstrous beast, go, run, stand, stay, lest on thy mother thou do fall. All you that wearied bodies have with sickness overpressed, lo, now I fly away, the cause of your unrest. Lift up your heads. A better state of air shall straight ensue when I am gone, for whom alone these dreadful mischiefs grew. And you that now half dead yet live in wretched misers, whom present torments press forth, hie you on apace. For lo, with me I carry hence all mischiefs under skies, all cruel fates, diseases all that for my sake did rise. With me they go, with me both grief, plagues, pox, botch, and all the ills that either now you press or ever after shall. With me they go, with me. These mates been meetest of all for me, who am the most unhappiest wretch that ever sun did see.
And so ends this cheerful, happy play. So, yes. Very fleet of foot, actually. It's running time slightly less than some of the other ones we've done. Alexander Neville gives it some good welly, actually. I'm quite pleased with what he's actually managed to do with this. It's nicely extra in the way that one hopes for a bit of Seneca. I did enjoy some of that, yeah, I mean it's interesting. I've been saying in the chat of the sort of the in my mind I've got Sophocles in my head, so I was constantly waiting for things that didn't happen, or happened in a very different way. So I was interestingly engaged actually in the sort of the textual differences. I knew they were different, but I couldn't actually remember how they were different from each other. So yeah, cheerful, happy times. Someone died on stage. It didn't die off stage and then get described about it at great length by other people. It was very confusing. We are, however, because we started a little late, we're running relatively low on time, as it were. We've lost a couple of our readers, so it's final thoughts in time, as it were. So thoughts on the play, thoughts on the text. Tom, any final thoughts you want to throw in?
No, it went along like a gallop. It was, it was tough, but it galloped along. And it, if you could keep on the horse, it was great.
Yeah, and I mean, when we first started, we were really pushing the pace because it was we started a bit late, so we were sort of trying to really get into it, and and some of it was rushed, but pulling back and then it's actually quite. These 14ers are surprisingly dynamic. I'm actually some bits are really being able to play with the flow of it all without completely mangling the verse. I mean that chorus speech I did in Act 1 was really engaging. I really, quite triggering, considering, at the time we're recording it, talking about streets filled with bodies and things. I was just at the time of recording this, we are in the midst of a horrible international conflict. So that was quite a moment. And then, of course, going on to effectively a discussion of the Black Death in great close-up detail. It was there was good, cheerful, happy things there. But yeah, it's built for audio. Actually, this is even more so than some of the others. It's very descriptive of things. I mean, especially with the bit with Teiresias, basically being asked to have what's happening in front of him described live, and the sort of audio descriptions are part of it several times. So it's nicely structured for that universe. Liza, any final thoughts?
Oh boy, that was quite a text. And when I first read it over before the session, I thought, oh God, it's a classical tragedy in 14ers. I'm losing the will to live here, because most of the ones we've done like this have been William Alexander. But this guy, Alexander Neville, who, if I'm reading the introduction right, was 16 when he did this?
I think a couple of years older than that, but yeah, he was young. He was a young chap.
Who's the better versifier between him and Alexander is a toss-up, but Neville is definitely the better dramatist. Because when you read Alexander 14ers, the pace just dies a death, and by the end of the act you're like,
Alexander doesn't do 14ers, does he? I think are you thinking of another Seneca?
I may be. Anyway, the point I was going to make is that Alexander feels really long because the lines are all end-stopped. And whereas there's enjambment. You can the lines flow into each other, and the thoughts aren't confined to one neat line or two neat lines. I mean, also the text is just incredibly extra and goes incredibly hard and is like, sets a great deal of store by being able to horrify the hearers, and that's what the Oedipus story, or at least this bit of the Oedipus story, is. It's horror. The next bit is the humane part, the human love that endures in the midst of tragedy. But this part is horror, and I think both Seneca and Neville, and our most excellent editor Eric, fulfilled the brief.
Yeah, there's some. I mean, basically Seneca is it's all horror. It's all cheerful, happy stuff. But yeah, I mean, he's nicely extra, and it is a shame. It's the only Alexander Neville that we have. We've done all of. In fact, it's almost all the way down. What have we got left? Studley and Noose. We have a Noose text, but we're done with Jasper Hayward. We're done with Neville. As we are halfway through our Seneca or pseudo Seneca journey. We're actually past the halfway mark on the actual Senecas, but two of these Senecan translations were not actually translations of Seneca. They're plays by somebody else or somebody else. Yeah, this had a certain candidacy for me, I have to say, slightly above some of the others. I certainly probably trim it back a bit, but just a little bit. It's not. It doesn't feel long. It isn't that long actually. It was about 1 hour 40. Under 2 hours. Good for a tragedy. Happy with that. So yeah, surprised actually how much I liked that one. I was not expecting it. Because, as I say, it's not my favourite version of Oedipus. So I had biases, and my biases were blown out of the water. So that nice? Okay, all that remains is to thank all the wonderful readers present and gone forth for all their wonderful reading. Thank you very much, everyone, and goodbye. For thee, and for thy filthy lust.